It did not take long for Carol, then a teenager and town hall clerk, and Gordon, aged around 20 and working at his parents' paint and wallpaper business, to fall in love. Their romance would repeatedly give way to rows and breakups, but they always got back together and in 1967 became man and wife. They moved into Bluestones, a house which Park was building in the village of Lees, near Barrow-in-Furness, Cumbria. Both Park and Carol worked as village primary school teachers and would later go on to have 2 children, Jeremy and Rachel. Gordon and Carol also adopted their niece Vanessa when she was 18 months old after her mother, Christine, who was Carol's sister, was murdered by her boyfriend in 1969. Both Gordon and Carol had had affairs in the years leading up to Carol's disappearance. Prior to her disappearance, according to her friends, Carol was feeling depressed. She had talked of tracing her biological parents as she was adopted. On the 17th of July 1976, Carol went missing. Gordon claimed that she had left home for another man, and Carol had left their home in Lees twice before. It was for this reason Gordon claimed that he did not report her missing for 6 weeks. Carol was said to time her periods away from home to coincide with the school holidays. Gordon claimed that it wasn't until she didn't return in time to take up her job as a primary school teacher in September, which was the start of the school term, that he realised that there was a problem. At this time he reported her missing via his solicitor, and her family was informed. On the day she vanished, the family had been due to visit Blackpool on a day trip. However, Carol said she felt unwell and wanted to remain behind in bed. Gordon claimed that he returned home to find Carol had left the house, leaving behind her wedding ring, and that there was no signs of a struggle. A missing persons inquiry was launched, but nothing came of it. The missing persons report was later lost, and it was implied by some that it was because both Gordon and a senior police commander involved in the case were Freemasons. On the 13th of August 1997, 21 years after her disappearance, amateur divers discovered Carol Park's body, clad only in a nightdress 75 feet down at the bottom of Coniston Water. She was nicknamed the Lady in the Lake by detectives after the 1943 detective novel by Raymond Chandler. The body had been wrapped in a canvas rucksack and plastic bags, tied with several knots and weighed down with lead piping. Her eyes had been covered by plasters. It was later reported that the body had landed on an underwater ledge, and had it been thrown into the water a few meters further from the land, it would have probably have never been found. Details of Carol's death were revealed in the post-mortem. There were severe injuries to the skull, and it was said that her face had been smashed by multiple blows. It was described through the media that the court had agreed that the murder weapon had been an ice axe, something which later the appeal court hearing corrected. Many unusual knots were used to tie the body, and the same knots were said to be used in Gordon Park's house and boat. At the time of the discovery of the body, Gordon and his third wife Jenny were on a cycling holiday in France. They heard news of the discovery of the body and are said to have seen footage of the police searching their house. On the 24th of August they arrived home, and Gordon was arrested on suspicion of murder at 8 a.m. the next morning. He was charged with the murder of Carol Park and remanded in Preston Prison. However, after 2 weeks, his solicitors managed to persuade the court to grant him bail. On the 6th of January 1998, the charges against Gordon were dropped due to lack of evidence. The Crown Prosecution Service released a statement. Reportedly, he told another inmate that she deserved it, as he had discovered his wife being unfaithful. After the charges were dropped, Gordon said that he wished to try to put all this, including the events of 21 years ago, behind him and try to return to everyday life. However, the fact that the charges were dropped angered Carol's brother, who said that he was disgusted by the way that Carol was portrayed in the proceedings, and talked of how Carol was not someone who had a string of lovers. Gordon was again arrested on the 13th of January 2004. Police said that the murder file had never been closed and that the arrest was following new leads. These new leads were later reported to be a confession by Michael Wainwright, who claimed to have been a cellmate of Gordon's during his short prison stay in 1997. The police then revisited the site where the body was discovered and found a piece of Westmoreland green slate, a stone that matched the rocks that made up the wall of the family's bungalow. The case was brought to trial at Manchester Crown Court and lasted 10 weeks. There was no single piece of evidence that pointed to Gordon, but the prosecution argued that when the evidence was placed together, it could only point to Park, and not a mysterious stranger or secret lover. The case for the prosecution rested on circumstantial evidence, with the jury being asked to consider knots, rocks used to weigh down the body and the ice axe, all linking Gordon Park to the crime. However, the statements of Michael Wainwright and another of Gordon's cellmates who had learning difficulties were also used as evidence by the prosecution. Gordon was sentenced to be jailed for life and told he must serve at least 15 years. The prosecution case suggested that Gordon had first put his hands around Carol's neck to strangle her, but that she had struggled. He then grabbed his ice axe and brought it down with what was described as considerable force, splitting open her head and smashing her teeth. The attack was described as consisting of 2 big heavy crushing blows by pathologist Dr. Edmund Tapp. Tapp's statements discounted the use of the ice axe itself, although suggesting that a similar heavy weapon with both blunt and sharp sides could have been used. During the trial, the prosecution speculated that Gordon had drugged his wife, possibly on or around the 17th of July, before tying her up and storing her body in a chest freezer and then dumping it in Coniston Water. On the 25th of January 2010, the morning of Park's 66th birthday, he was found hanged and unconscious in his prison cell in Garth Prison and pronounced dead at the scene later in the morning. It is believed that a ligature was involved and that Park inflicted the injuries upon himself. Park had not been assessed for the risk of suicide. His son, Jeremy Park, said that we are all completely devastated and still believe his innocence 100%. On the 26th of November 2014, it was confirmed that the Criminal Cases Review Commission, CCRC, was examining the verdict and new DNA evidence had come to light. On the 28th of October 2018, the CCRC confirmed that they were referring Park's conviction to the Court of Appeal. There was much local interest in the matter, as was shown by the sales of the local paper, the North West Evening Mail, when it ran a special edition on the case. Park maintained his innocence and received much support from his family and friends. His children, Jeremy and Rachel, appointed a new legal team in an attempt to find grounds for appeal. Jeremy also set up a website, freegordon.com, in a bid to raise awareness and support for the case. A year into Park's life sentence, around 40 family members and friends held a vigil at Strangeways Prison in a bid to raise awareness of the fact that there is an innocent man in prison. Another was held a year later, led by Jenny Park, and a third on the third anniversary of Park's imprisonment. Not everyone with a link to the family supported Gordon's attempts to clear his name. Vanessa Fisher, Park's adoptive daughter, appeared as a witness for the prosecution at the trial, telling how her father would hit the children with a stick or cane, and how he would not discuss his wife's disappearance. On the grounds for appeal, the first problem with the evidence is the use of inmate informant evidence, such as that from Michael Wainwright. Glenn Banks, a man with whom Park had briefly shared a cell and who claimed in court that Park had admitted his guilt to him, was described as highly suggestible, frequently changing his story, and also claimed that Park had admitted to killing Carol while sailing to Blackpool. Wainwright, the other informant, was said to be a heavy cannabis smoker and admitted to hearing voices. He claimed that Gordon had said that he went upstairs, found Carol in bed with another man, and killed her in a fit of rage. This seemed unlikely, as the Parks lived in a bungalow, and the supposed lover has never come forward. Park also claimed to have actually never met Wainwright. The prosecution also failed to disclose evidence which undermined suggestions the murder weapon was an ice axe belonging to Park. Two dental experts agreed injuries to Carol Park's teeth could not have been caused by such a weapon. Park's legal team claim evidence not heard at his trial cast doubt on suggestions the axe, with a blade at one side and a pick on the other, could have been used as the murder weapon. The Crown disputes that, saying it had never been implied that the axe was used on Carol Park. A link between the family home and the rock found near the body has also been discredited. The Westmoreland green slate had been worked in the area for hundreds of years and could have come from anywhere, and Park's DNA had not been preserved within knots on the rope used to bind her body. Park's appeal began on the 5th of November 2019 at the Court of Appeal. On May the 1st, 2020, his appeal was rejected.